Jasmine Thompson was a typical 17-year-old with dreams bigger than the sky she was about to soar through. Growing up in a loving household in Atlanta, she balanced the normal struggles of high school with the extraordinary reality of being the daughter of Marcus Thompson, the CEO and majority owner of one of America's largest airlines, Thompson Air. Jasmine had always loved flying, not just because it was part of her family legacy, but because the airplane represented possibility, the chance to explore, to connect, to be somewhere new. Today, she was especially excited. It was the first time she'd fly first class alone on a cross-country flight from New York to Los Angeles, a graduation gift from her father. To Jasmine, the plush leather seat and the soft clink of fine glassware were symbols not just of luxury, but of recognition and hope for her future. Marcus Thompson, on the other hand, was a man deeply rooted in both tradition and change. The airline his grandfather founded decades ago had grown into a nationwide giant, but with that growth came new challenges, especially around race, diversity, and the culture within the company. Marcus had worked hard to modernize the airline's policies, promoting inclusivity and training programs to fight bias, yet he knew change didn't come overnight. His daughter's experiences were about to remind him just how far the airline and the country still had to go. As Jasmine approached the gate, her heart swelled with pride and anticipation. The staff greeted her warmly, many knowing who she was, some unaware but still friendly. The plane was a sleek, modern marvel of engineering, gleaming in the morning sun. Jasmine settled into her seat, savoring the quiet hum of engines preparing for takeoff, the soft murmur of other passengers boarding, and the promise of the hours ahead. Claire Reynolds, the flight attendant assigned to first class that day, moved down the aisle methodically, checking boarding passes and welcoming passengers with practiced smiles. Claire was in her early 30s, a single mother juggling the demands of a job she loved, but also feared losing. She prided herself on professionalism, but beneath that was a layer of weariness, a subtle edge shaped by years of feeling scrutinized and overlooked. Today, Claire's eyes caught Jasmine's, and something flickered, a hesitation, a judgment unspoken but felt. Jasmine's skin tone, her youth, and the subtle way she held herself didn't fit Claire's preconceived expectations of a first-class passenger. A quiet internal voice whispered doubts and assumptions, setting the stage for what would soon unfold. When Jasmine requested a glass of champagne, Claire hesitated. Instead of offering the usual greeting and swift service, Claire's tone shifted subtly but unmistakably as she said, "We're a bit short on champagne right now. Would you like sparkling water instead?" Jasmine's smile faltered. She replied softly, "No, thank you. I'd really like champagne." Claire forced a polite smile but moved on, ignoring Jasmine's repeated attempts to get the service promised to all first-class passengers. The tension in the cabin thickened, passengers nearby casting furtive glances, some uncomfortable, others silent witnesses to the unfolding injustice. Jasmine's mind raced. Was it her? Her skin? The fact that she wasn't accompanied by a parent or wealthy-looking companion? She clenched her fists quietly, holding back tears of frustration. She had worked so hard, earned her place here, and yet was being denied the respect and dignity afforded to others simply because of who she was. The silence that followed was deafening. Other passengers subtly shifted away, unsure whether to intervene or ignore. The flight attendants moved with a different energy, less warm, more distant. Jasmine's internal struggle was a battle between the desire to stand up and the exhaustion of fighting yet another unseen battle. Upon landing, Jasmine shared her experience with her father, Marcus. His initial disbelief soon turned into fierce determination. He knew that this wasn't just about his daughter or a flight. It was a symptom of a deeper, systemic issue that needed confronting head-on. Meanwhile, Claire's world unraveled in the days after the flight. Haunted by guilt and confusion, she questioned her own biases and fears. Conversations with co-workers, training sessions, and quiet reflection led Claire to confront the uncomfortable truth about herself. What had seemed like small decisions, who to smile at, who to serve promptly, were actually walls that kept people like Jasmine out, and Claire wanted to change. Marcus stepped in, balancing his role as a CEO and a father. He launched an internal investigation, making it clear that the airline's values had been compromised. Training programs were overhauled, diversity initiatives intensified, and Claire was both held accountable and supported in her journey to become a better ally. Marcus understood that accountability and compassion had to go hand in hand. Jasmine, for her part, refused to be silenced. She shared her story on social media and at school, becoming a voice for others who had faced similar discrimination. Her authenticity and courage inspired many, igniting conversations far beyond the airline industry. The story culminated in a powerful public event where Claire apologized directly to Jasmine in front of airline staff and the media. The apology was heartfelt, not just words, but a commitment to action. Jasmine's response was measured and wise beyond her years. She accepted the apology, but emphasized the work that still lay ahead. Marcus announced a new foundation dedicated to promoting equity and fairness in air travel and business, naming Jasmine as a founding ambassador. The airline, once a backdrop for an injustice, became a beacon for change. Jasmine's journey, marked by pain, resilience, and hope, reminded everyone that fairness is not a privilege for the few, but a right for all. Her story urged us to recognize bias, challenge injustice, and hold on to the power of family, courage, and love. Jasmine's story did not end on that flight. In fact, it was only just beginning. After that harrowing experience, she found herself wrestling with a swirl of emotions: hurt, anger, confusion, but also a growing fire of determination. The champagne that was denied to her wasn't just about a drink. It symbolized a much deeper denial, a message that she, despite her achievements and her family's stature, was not fully welcome or respected in spaces where others easily belonged. Back at home, Marcus sat quietly in his office, the walls lined with decades of airline memorabilia, framed photos of planes soaring through clouds, and awards celebrating the company's milestones. Yet today, those symbols felt hollow. Jasmine had recounted the incident in vivid detail, her voice steady but laced with disappointment. He could see the pain behind her words, the subtle tremor that betrayed her usual composure. As a father, Marcus was devastated. As a CEO, he was furious. But more than anything, he felt an urgent responsibility to do better, not just for Jasmine, but for all the passengers and employees who deserved fairness. "Dad," Jasmine said one evening as they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, "it's not just about me. It's about every person who gets looked down on, dismissed, or treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. It's about the system that lets this happen." Marcus nodded, the weight of those words settling deep within him. He had long championed diversity initiatives in the company, but this personal confrontation with bias sharpened his resolve. "We're going to fix this," he promised, not just with words, but with action. The next days were a whirlwind. Marcus called an emergency meeting with his executive team. The airline's leadership understood the gravity. not only of the public relations risk, but of the ethical imperative. Claire Reynolds, the flight attendant involved, was summoned to the office. The conversation was difficult. Claire was defensive at first, insisting she hadn't meant to be unfair, that she was overwhelmed and tired. But as Marcus gently pressed, she began to acknowledge the discomfort she had felt around Jasmine and the assumptions she'd unconsciously made. "I never thought I was the problem," Claire admitted quietly. "But now I see how my fear and biases shaped my actions." Recognizing Claire's vulnerability was key to moving forward. Marcus was clear that discrimination would not be tolerated, but he also believed in the power of growth and redemption. He mandated comprehensive training on unconscious bias for all staff, starting immediately. The airline would also institute new protocols to ensure that every passenger, regardless of background, was treated with dignity and respect. Meanwhile, Jasmine became more vocal. She posted a heartfelt video on social media, recounting her experience with candor and courage. Her message was simple but powerful. No one should be made to feel invisible or less because of who they are. The video resonated far beyond her followers, sparking discussions about race, privilege, and fairness in everyday life. Media outlets picked up her story, framing it within the larger context of ongoing struggles for equality in America. Jasmine's friends and community rallied around her. At school, she was both praised and challenged, as some struggled to understand the weight of her experience. But Jasmine stood firm, knowing her voice could help others who faced similar discrimination. Claire, grappling with guilt and newfound awareness, reached out privately to Jasmine with a letter of apology. It was a raw and honest admission, expressing sorrow and a commitment to change. Jasmine, embodying grace and strength beyond her years, responded with forgiveness, but also with a reminder that apologies needed to be accompanied by action. The tension between personal accountability and systemic change played out within the airline and in the public eye. Marcus worked tirelessly to transform company culture, initiating listening sessions where employees shared their stories of bias and exclusion. He also launched a public campaign promoting inclusion, highlighting the airline's commitment to serving every customer with respect. The airline's journey was not without setbacks. Some employees resisted changes, while others questioned whether the company's efforts were genuine or merely performative. Jasmine, Marcus, and Claire each faced moments of doubt and frustration, but they persisted, united by a shared vision of a more just future. Months later, the airline hosted a special event to announce a new foundation dedicated to advancing equity in the aviation industry. Jasmine was named an ambassador, a role that allowed her to amplify her message and inspire others. The event was a powerful symbol of transformation, a moment when pain and prejudice gave way to hope and progress. Standing before a crowd of employees, passengers, and media, Jasmine spoke with clarity and passion. This journey isn't about one person or one incident. It's about all of us. It's about recognizing the humanity in each other, standing up when things aren't right, and building a world where fairness isn't the exception, but the rule. Her words echoed long after the event ended, a call to action for all who heard them. Jasmine's story reminds us that change often begins with uncomfortable truths, but it is fueled by courage, empathy, and the unwavering support of family and community. In a world too often divided by difference, her experience stands as a beacon, a testament to the power of standing up, speaking out, and demanding the dignity every human deserves. Jasmine's journey continued to unfold in ways none of them had anticipated. After the public apology and the launch of the Equity Foundation, she found herself at the center of a growing movement. Schools invited her to speak. Community groups asked her to share her story, and online forums buzzed with discussions sparked by her courage. Yet beneath the spotlight, Jasmine grappled with a personal struggle, the daily reality of being a young Black woman in a society where moments of joy and achievement were too often shadowed by subtle and sometimes blatant prejudice. Claire Reynolds, too, embarked on a difficult path of self-reflection and transformation. At first, she felt defensive, questioning whether she had truly done anything wrong. But the more she learned about unconscious bias and systemic racism, the more she recognized the ways her own fears and assumptions had shaped her behavior. Claire sought counseling, engaged in diversity workshops, and began mentoring new flight attendants to cultivate empathy and fairness. The airline supported her through this process, balancing accountability with encouragement. It wasn't easy. Claire often wrestled with guilt and shame, but her commitment to change was sincere. Marcus Thompson found himself balancing multiple roles: a protective father, a resolute CEO, and an advocate for broader societal change. Internally, he wrestled with anger that his daughter had been hurt by his own company's failures. Externally, he faced pressure from stakeholders, employees, and the public to not only address the immediate incident, but to enact systemic reforms. He launched an independent audit of the airline's policies and culture, brought in experts to guide ongoing training, and created a transparent reporting system for passengers and employees to voice concerns about discrimination. Throughout this process, Marcus and Jasmine shared many late-night conversations, their bond deepening as they confronted painful truths together. Jasmine's insights grounded Marcus, reminding him that policies and procedures only mattered if they translated into real respect and dignity for every person. He, in turn, shared stories of his grandfather's original vision for the airline, a vision rooted in opportunity and inclusion, and committed himself to honoring that legacy in a modern world. The airline's efforts began to show results. Passengers reported improved experiences, employees felt more empowered to speak out, and the public perception of Thompson Air shifted positively. Yet the work was ongoing. Change, Marcus often reminded his team, was a marathon, not a sprint. Meanwhile, Jasmine's activism expanded beyond aviation. She became involved in broader social justice campaigns, using her platform to highlight inequalities in education, healthcare, and criminal justice. Her speeches emphasized that discrimination was not just isolated incidents, but part of systemic structures that required collective action. One poignant moment came when Jasmine visited a local high school to talk about her experience. A young student approached her afterward, eyes bright with hope and gratitude. "You showed me I don't have to be silent," she said, "that my voice matters." Jasmine smiled, realizing that her pain had transformed into purpose, not just for herself, but for an entire generation. The transformation within Claire also inspired change beyond the airline. She collaborated with nonprofit organizations to develop training modules that could be used industry-wide. Her story became a case study in humility, growth, and the power of confronting uncomfortable truths. On a crisp autumn morning, the airline hosted an event to celebrate progress and renew its commitment to equity. Jasmine stood at the podium alongside her father and Claire. The room was filled with employees, community leaders, and passengers who had been part of the journey. Marcus spoke first, acknowledging past failures, but emphasizing the company's dedication to a better future. Claire followed, sharing her journey of learning and accountability. Finally, Jasmine's voice rang out clear and strong. "Change begins with recognizing our shared humanity." It requires courage to admit wrongs and the determination to make things right. Together, we can build a world where fairness is not an exception, but the foundation. The audience rose in a standing ovation, the energy in the room electric with hope and resolve. Jasmine's story, from a flight attendant's dismissal to a national symbol of resilience and justice, became a powerful reminder. Fairness and dignity are rights everyone deserves, no matter their background. Her experience taught that standing up against discrimination takes strength, but with family support, community solidarity, and a willingness to learn and grow, transformation is possible. The tale ends not with an ending, but with a beginning, an invitation for all of us to look within, challenge injustice, and soar toward a more just and equitable world. Jasmine's influence rippled far beyond that flight, and even beyond the airline industry itself. As her story went viral, she became a beacon for young people facing discrimination and a voice in the national conversation about racial injustice. She used every platform she could, social media, community events, school assemblies, to share her truth and advocate for change. What made her message resonate was her honesty about pain and resilience, a refusal to let bitterness define her. Instead, she chose to illuminate the path forward. The airline, under Marcus's leadership, took increasingly bold steps. Beyond training and policies, they invested in mentorship programs to support employees from diverse backgrounds, particularly Black and brown staff, who had historically faced barriers to advancement. Marcus understood that systemic change meant nurturing talent and leadership from within, breaking cycles of exclusion that had lingered too long. He also pushed for transparency in hiring and promotion, recognizing that trust could only be rebuilt through real accountability. Meanwhile, Claire's journey was both public and private. She often spoke candidly about her mistakes and growth in interviews and panels, helping others understand the complexities of implicit bias. Her willingness to confront discomfort made her an unlikely but powerful advocate for empathy and change within the service industry. She maintained a personal connection with Jasmine, their relationship evolving from awkward apologies to mutual respect. This unlikely friendship became a symbol of reconciliation, showing that progress is possible when people are willing to listen and learn. Jasmine's school became a microcosm of the larger movement. Inspired by her story, students and teachers worked to create a more inclusive environment. Discussions about race, privilege, and fairness became part of the curriculum. Peer-led groups organized workshops and safe spaces for dialogue, helping young people explore their own biases and experiences. Jasmine's courage sparked a culture shift, proving that change can start anywhere. One day, Jasmine received a letter from a passenger who had been on the same flight that day but hadn't spoken up. The letter expressed regret for not intervening and a commitment to be an ally in the future. This small act underscored the importance of bystander courage, the idea that everyone has a role in confronting injustice. Marcus often reflected on the deeper lessons of the incident. For him, it wasn't just about fixing a single mistake. It was about transforming the company and, by extension, influencing the industry and society at large. He launched partnerships with civil rights organizations and universities to research and implement best practices. The airline became a model for other companies seeking to address inequity authentically. Jasmine, as she grew into adulthood, continued to balance her advocacy with her personal ambitions. She pursued studies in social justice and business, determined to blend passion with practical skills. Her goal was clear: to create opportunities for others and dismantle barriers wherever she found them. Her story was a constant reminder of the power of resilience, family support, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Throughout the ups and downs, one truth remained clear: discrimination hurts, but it also fuels change. Jasmine's experience on that flight was painful, but it sparked conversations and actions that reverberated far beyond first class. It reminded a nation that fairness is not a privilege to be granted, but a right to be defended. In the end, Jasmine's story invites us all to look around, to see the quiet struggles, to speak out against injustice, and to support those who face discrimination. It is a call to build a world where every person, regardless of their race or background, can step onto a plane, walk into a room, or chase a dream with the confidence that they belong. Because no one should ever be denied dignity. Not in first class. Not anywhere.